Welcome back. This is Omar, and I'm here with the legendary Jim Shooter. How are you doing, Jim?
Pretty good. How you doing, Omar?
I'm doing well, sir. Thank you for asking. Now, you are a legend in the comic book field. Like, don't be so humble. Don't be so humble. We all love you. Come on, Valiant, Secret Wars. I mean, you're the guy that started the big crossover events at Marvel.
That's true. We did. Yeah, we started the crossovers. After that, everybody did them. You know.
You know why, right?
Yeah, because they sold a lot.
Yeah, they did. So you also wrote the one of the big questions I've always had personally was the true story of Phoenix.
Oh, the true story. What? Well, the true story of Phoenix is that storyline started. Chris Claremont was stuck for a storyline, and so he and his editor and we went to this little Chinese joint that was sort of the company cafeteria, and we sitting there talking about it and just freewheeling, just coming up with ideas. And I said, Chris, I said, we've had a lot of villains who later became good guys. The Black Widow, Hawkeye, other ones. I said, but we've never had a hero go bad. What if we had, and he said, don't say anything else. He says, I want to do this myself. So anyway, the idea he had, or the idea we sort of had, was that Phoenix would become Dark Phoenix and become a villain and remain a villain and become like the Doctor Doom for the X-Men, like the nemesis for the X-Men, really turn into a bad guy. So the story's going along and it's real good, and I'm reading issue by issue, and I always had to check the books before they went to the printer, so I had to sign off on them. So anyway, it's getting near the end, and she's blowing up planets, and she's blowing up starships, and I'm like, whoa. So I went to the editor. I said, show me whatever else you have. Well, he had some work in progress, and then for the last issue, he had the plot, right? And so I read the plot, and it was ridiculous. I mean, what they did is they copped out. They just couldn't pull the trigger, because they liked the character too much. So they had the aliens cure her mind, and then she gets to go back and live on Long Island and, be an X-Men and hang out and stuff. I said, no. You don't blow up a planet and then just skate. Even if you were warped, there'd be consequences, First of all, Storm wouldn't like you anymore. But anyway, so I said, no, that's not an ending. You're just copping out. And so he said, well, what do you want me to do? And I said, well, maybe she goes to galactic prison or something, He says, I don't like that. All right, fine. I said, you come up with something. So the next morning he comes in, he stands in my doorway, says, I'm going to kill her. I said, okay, it's a deal.
Just like that?
Yeah. And he said, what do you mean? He says, you can't kill her. I said, no, you're going to kill her. And so we get in this stupid reverse argument, and then he runs off. And 10 seconds later, the phone rings, and it's John Bird calling from Calgary, Canada. And he says, the first words, are you out of your mind? And I said, no, we made a deal. We're killing her. And so now the good news is, they were miffed about it for a little while. But let's face it, read that book. They knocked it out of the park. Once they just sort of realized we got to do this, they did it right. And so that book, the sales of that book took X-Men from the middle of the road to number one in the industry, where it stayed for 17 years.
I do have to ask this because things are different now with the internet and things like that. But back then, did readers and comic book stores and places like that, did they know they were going to kill Phoenix off?
No, they didn't know. It was, that was kind of the surprise ending. And besides, that wasn't the intended ending. The intended ending was that she was going to become a villain and stay a villain. So nobody knew. It was a last-minute thing, and I think that's one of the reasons it had such impact. And then the next thing you know, like I say, the book sales went up, and all of a sudden, John and Chris and everybody, they're all in demand at conventions and stuff. I flew them all out to San Diego. I said to the organizers there, I said, you give these guys some stage time, I'll pay for everything. And they did. They did panels and stuff, and the place was packed. It was jumping. It was great.
Do you ever miss those days? Miss working with a bunch of creators like that?
Yeah, sure. I worked with this who's who of comics, all these great people. Chris and John, but Bill Sienkiewicz and Walton Louise. You walk down the hallway, you see Archie Goodwin and Larry Hama. And, it was just like Mark Silvestri for a while. All these brilliant artists, great creators, and almost all of them are really nice people.
Yeah, I've gotten to meet some, luckily, and they're great. And like you mentioned, Mark Grunwald had passed away. I never did get to meet him.
He was a great guy. He was a little crazy, but that's all right.
I heard stories.
You're working 16 hours a day. Sometimes you just got to do something crazy, you know. Oh, I forgot to mention John Romita. I walked, down the hall, and there's John Romita, the Grandmaster Hall of Fame.
So, you were the part of the Valiant movement too, right? When that was coming
I
out.
founded it. I'm the founder. I wrote every issue up through Unity. I was or rewrote it in a few cases when I had somebody else try at it. I was the editor-in-chief and president and CEO, and raised the money and started the company, got the licenses.
The camera guy is a huge fan of the Valiant universe.
Well, I mean, I did the best I could with it. My evil partner, started sleeping with the banker, and then they had me outvoted on the board, and that's why we ended up doing Nintendo comics and wrestling comics, because he also, as a lawyer, represented them, and he made a deal with himself across the table, which made him a lot of money, and then now I'm doing wrestling books, which we did the best we could. Some of those turned out pretty good, but that was not likely to succeed. And when I finally got to do what I set out to do, the regular Valiant stuff, took us a few months, and then
it's Michael Golden making faces at us.
It took us a few months, but we got it going, and then that became a tremendous success. Yeah.
Now, there's a new Valiant. Have you read any of that, or have you been asked to come back to do anything with that?
Well, originally 2 young men, Dinesh and Jason, somehow bought the characters out of bankruptcy, of Acclaim Entertainment. And so they had these characters, but they didn't kind of know what to do with them. And then they decided maybe they wanted to publish, and they probably needed some help with that. So they hired me, kept me secret, because I don't know why, but they didn't want anybody to know I worked there. I think because they thought if it didn't work out, they didn't want to be embarrassed, They also hired Bill Jemas, who used to be at Marvel, the Ultimates and all that. They hired him to come in as a consultant, and a few other people, and so we were preparing to publish, and the thing is, they didn't have any background or experience in publishing, and it was kind of frustrating for me. And so I finally said, I don't know, you guys, you go on. I'm leaving. I ended up working for Dark Horse after that. But so I did work for the Valiant guys for 7 months. But since then, new money has come in, new management. And one of the young men is gone, and the other one, I don't know what he does. But I understand that the books are pretty good. I haven't read them yet.
Oh, you haven't?
No. I understand they're good, and I also understand that this guy who's ex-Marvel, he used to be a big shot at Marvel. I can't remember his name right now. But he's been good about getting movie projects going and things. He's a real executive. He knows what he's doing. So I have the best wishes. I hope they do well.
Man, you're such a nice guy. Now, I got just 2 more questions. You have worked everywhere, right? DC, Marvel, Dark Horse, and of course Valiant, Defiant.
Comics.
Now, is there any characters you want to do that you haven't done? Because I think you have been just everywhere. Are there any characters left that you would love to just tell stories about?
I had the chance to write a few pages of Wonder Woman in the Superman-Spider-Man crossover, and I always thought that nobody was really doing it right, and that I had some ideas that I'd like to try. So that'd be one. And but I've written basically most of the major Marvel and DC characters at one point or another.
So you were the man behind Transformers, right?
Yeah, I created the foundation story, what they call the backstory in the Bible in animation, and then I turned it over to Bob Budiansky, and he did everything else, all the names of the characters and the characterizations and the stories and stuff like that. I just laid the groundwork, and it was almost the same with G.I. Joe. I think I did less on G.I. Joe. I came up with a few little things at the beginning, like call in G.I. Joe, and it's an anti-terrorist unit, and and also that would be the name of the unit rather than just one guy.
Did both of them start the same way? They were a toy company that needed stories to be told, or were Transformers and G.I. Joe a little bit different?
Well, G.I. Joe came first, and the way that happened was the president of Hasbro Toys ran into the president of Marvel at some charity function, and they started talking. And Hasbro was thinking about reigniting the trademark G.I. Joe, but they didn't know what they were going to do with it. They didn't know how yet, and so
it wasn't a show yet.
It wasn't anything. It was just like, hey, let's reactivate this trademark. And so the president of Marvel, Jim Galton, he said to him, well, you should let us figure it out because we got nothing but geniuses, you know. And so anyway, then we go to a meeting, Jim Galton and I, with the Hasbro guys. And they didn't have anything. They had a picture of a soldier, a logo, G.I. Joe, and then underneath it said a real American hero. That's all they had. They weren't even sure what size figures they were going to make. I talked them into doing the Star Wars size, what is that, 3 3/4 inch? And they anyway. So then the one guy says to me, he says, well, we want to have a line of toys. What do we do? Have G.I. Joe, G.I. Fred, G.I. Steve? I said, no. It's the name of the unit, you know, and it's anti-terrorist. You can't have war. I said, so when there's trouble, you call in G.I. Joe, and they like that. And they said, well, look, what we want to do is animation, toys, comics, everything at once, which is kind of the Japanese model. You do a sort of a blitz of merchandise and publishing and TV and stuff. So they said, can you create a story for us to base our animation and your comics and everything on? I said, yeah, I think we can handle that. So I went back to the office and I told Larry Hama what had happened. He had some stuff he was already working on. He said, well, can I use this for that? I said, sure. And they, like I said, he did almost everything. Archie Goodwin created the Cobra Command and the Cobra Commandos. And then for Transformers, after G.I. Joe was a success, one of their executives came in, put this car on my desk and goes, flip, 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 it's a robot. Flip, 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 it's a car. And I said, well, yeah, that's great. Why does it do that? And he said, that's what I'm here to find out. And so I ended up writing the foundation story for that myself. Well, Larry did most of the G.I. Joe one. I ended up writing that myself, and they liked it. And our production studio did the animation just like with G.I. Joe. We did the comics, and of course, they did the toys, and there was lots of merchandise and stuff. Huge success, both of them.
Well, from the bottom of all Transformer fans, thank you so much for that comic book, because it really changed the way, and they're still here through IDW now.
Yeah. And like I say, if I didn't mention it enough, Bob Budiansky, he took what I did, the little foundation I built, and everything else was his. So.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your time, sir. It was a pleasure talking to you. Again, this is Omar and Jim Shooter. Do I shake the man's hand?